All right, welcome back. This is an original story from Hidden Revenge Family, and it took a turn truly you didn't see coming. Let's get into it.
Get out of my house. The sound hit first. My father's hand slammed flat against the Thanksgiving table hard enough to rattle the plates. Silverware jumped. My wine glass tipped and spilled across the tablecloth, soaking into the cheap fabric my mother insisted was good enough for family. Then his finger came up, straight at my face. Did you hear me? Richard Sterling leaned forward, jaw tight, eyes already red like he'd been waiting for this moment all night. Get out of my house. Nobody moved. Not my mother, not my sister, not even Valerie's fiancé, who suddenly looked very interested in his mashed potatoes. I didn't flinch. I just reached for a napkin and wiped the wine off my hand. Okay, I said, calm enough to make it worse. That's when Patricia finally spoke, her voice soft in that fake practiced way she used whenever she wanted to sound reasonable while doing something completely unreasonable. Evelyn, don't make this harder than it needs to be, she said, folding her hands like she was about to lead a prayer. We've talked about this. No, they hadn't. Not with me. They'd talked about me. Across the table, Valerie leaned back in her chair, one hand resting on the rock on her finger, like she was posing for a magazine cover. The ring caught the chandelier light and threw it right into my eyes. She smiled. Not warm, not apologetic, just satisfied. Mom's right, she said. We need the space. Of course she did. 5 minutes earlier, she had stood up right where my father was, now lifted her glass and announced her engagement like she'd just been promoted to something higher than human. Colonel Daniel Hayes, she'd said, slow and proud, making sure everyone caught the rank before the name. We're getting married in 6 months. My father had nearly choked on his drink trying to stand up fast enough to hug her. A colonel, he repeated like it was the only word that mattered. That's my girl, not my daughter's, just one. Now that same girl was looking at me like I was furniture she wanted removed. We're turning the basement into a prep studio. Valerie continued waving her hand like the decision had already been signed and stamped. Wedding planning, fittings, meetings with vendors. It's going to be a lot. I let that sit for a second. Then I asked the only question that mattered. And where exactly do you expect me to go? Richard laughed, a short, sharp sound. That's not my problem. Of course it wasn't. You've had 6 years living down there, he went on. 6 years to figure your life out. That's more than generous. 6 years. 6 years of paying for repairs they didn't even know about. 6 years of covering property taxes when they came up short. 6 years of keeping the house standing while they played their roles retired general. Perfect wife, decorated daughter. I set my napkin down. I've been contributing to this house, I said. Maintenance, utilities, structural repairs. You know that. Richard's expression didn't change. If anything, it got worse. Oh, I know, he said. You shuffle papers somewhere in a government office and suddenly you think you're carrying this family. There it was, that word, papers. Valerie smirked like she'd heard this speech 100 times and still found it funny. Let's be honest, she added, tilting her head. You sit at a desk all day checking forms. Meanwhile, I've actually served. I've actually done something. I looked at her. Really looked this time. Perfect posture, perfect uniform earlier that day, perfect record. The kind of person people thanked at airports. The kind of person no one ever questioned. You think that's all I do? I asked. Richard cut in before she could answer. Don't start, he snapped. We all know what you do. You ride the coattails of this family's name, while your sister actually earns hers. There it was again. This family, I almost smiled. Because the truth was none of them had any idea what that name was actually tied to anymore. Patricia leaned forward, lowering her voice like she was offering me a favor. We're giving you 30 days, she said. That's more than fair. You can find an apartment, maybe something closer to your office. She hesitated on the last word. Like even she didn't respect it enough to say it cleanly. 30 days. Valerie crossed her legs, satisfied. That should be plenty of time, she said, unless you've been too busy filing paperwork to plan your own life. I let the silence stretch. No anger, no raised voice, just quiet. It made them uncomfortable. Good. You want me out, I said finally. Richard leaned back, folding his arms. That's exactly what I said. I nodded once. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out my keys. Not just the basement keys. All of them. I placed them on the table. Right in front of him. The small metal clink cut through the room louder than his yelling ever did. Okay, I said. That got their attention. Patricia blinked. Valerie straightened slightly. Richard frowned. That's it, he asked. No argument, no attitude. I stood up slowly. No, I said. You made your decision. For a second, I thought he might actually feel something. Then it disappeared. Good, he said. About time you acted like an adult. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair. Valerie watched me the whole time, her smile fading just a little, like she was expecting more of a fight and didn't quite know what to do without it. You're really just leaving, she asked. I looked at her. Yeah, I said. I am, because there was nothing left to say. Not here, not to them. I turned and walked toward the front door. Behind me, I could hear Patricia already shifting back into hostess mode, telling Valerie's fiancé to ignore the tension and go back to eating. Like I had just stepped out for air, like I wasn't walking out of their lives. My hand paused on the doorknob, just for a second, not because I was hesitating, because I was thinking. About paperwork, about signatures, about ownership, about the fact that the house my father had just thrown me out of wasn't as simple as he believed. His name was on the title. That part was true. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the property had been quietly leveraged years ago, refinanced through a private trust. A trust I controlled. Every payment, every adjustment, every clause. All of it ran through systems they didn't even know existed. I opened the door. Cold night air hit my face sharp and clean. Behind me, the house was still loud, still full, still convinced it was untouchable. I stepped outside and closed the door without looking back. And just like that, the noise disappeared. The street was quiet, empty, peaceful in a way that house had never been. I walked down the driveway, the sound of my footsteps steady against the pavement. No rush, no panic. Because for the first time that night, everything made sense. They thought they had just kicked me out. What they actually did was step onto ground they didn't realize was already shifting under them. Before I go any further, let me ask you something. Have you ever been the one person in the room who knew exactly what was going on, while everyone else treated you like you didn't matter? Tell me in the comments. I zipped the suitcase halfway and paused when the door slammed open hard enough to hit the wall. Valerie didn't knock. She never had to. She stood in the doorway like she owned the place already, arms crossed, engagement ring catching the weak light from the hallway. No apology, no hesitation, just that same look she'd had at the table, like I was something she needed cleared out before the real event could start. You're packing fast, she said. I didn't look up right away. I folded a shirt, set it neatly into the suitcase, then pulled the zipper another inch. I don't like dragging things out, I said. Good, she replied. Then this won't take long. That tone again, efficient, cold, like she was giving an order, not having a conversation. I finally looked at her. What do you want, Valerie? She stepped inside and shut the door behind her. The click echoed in the small basement room. For a second, it felt like the air got tighter. I need you to do something for me, she said. Of course she did. I leaned back slightly against the edge of the bed, waiting. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thin folder. No markings on the outside. Clean. Too clean. She held it out. Fast track this, she said. It's a procurement approval. Dad's company. I didn't take it. What kind of approval? Routine, she said quickly. Supply chain clearance. Nothing complicated. Just needs a push. Nothing complicated. That's what people say when they don't want you asking questions. I took the folder anyway. Not because I was going to help her. Because I wanted to see how bad it was. I flipped it open. The first page told me everything I needed to know. Vendor history didn't line up. Contract numbers were formatted wrong. The approval chain had gaps, big ones. The kind you don't miss unless you're trying not to look. I turned another page. Signatures. One of them was my father's, except it wasn't. Close enough to pass a quick glance. Not close enough to survive a real audit. I felt something shift. Not surprise, not anger. Recognition. This wasn't sloppy. It was deliberate. I closed the folder and looked at her. This should have been flagged, I said. Valerie rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. It was delayed, she said. That's why I'm here. No, I said. This should have been frozen. That got a reaction. Small, quick, but it was there. She recovered fast. You're overthinking it, she said. It just needs your approval, that's it. I watched her for a second. Same posture, same confidence, same certainty that nothing applied to her. It wasn't new. It had never been new. Growing up, Valerie was the one people stood for. The one teachers praised. The one neighbors talked about. The one who left for training and came back with medals and stories that made everyone at the dinner table go quiet. She lived in the spotlight. I didn't. I stayed behind, studied, worked, built something that didn't come with applause. And every time someone asked what I did, it was always the same reaction. Oh, office work. Like that was the end of the sentence. Like that was the end of me. Valerie stepped closer, tapping the folder in my hand. Look, she said, lowering her voice slightly. I'm doing you a favor by coming to you directly. This goes through the system the normal way. It'll sit there for weeks, maybe months, or get rejected, I said. She smiled. Only if someone wants it to. There it was, not even subtle anymore. You want me to override a flagged procurement request, I said. For Dad's company. I want you to sign it, she corrected. You already have access. You already have the authority. Why not use it? I held her gaze. Because it's not clean. Her smile faded just a little. It doesn't need to be clean, she said. It needs to be approved. No, I said. It needs to be legal. That did it. The patience dropped. You're unbelievable, she snapped. This is exactly why you're stuck down here. You don't know how the real world works. I didn't respond. She stepped closer, voice sharper now. Do you think any of this runs on rules? She continued. You think contracts get signed because everything is perfect. No, they get signed because the right people make decisions. And you think that's you, I asked. I know it is, she said. Of course she did. She'd spent her whole life being told that. She crossed her arms again, leaning slightly forward. Just sign it, she said. Nobody's going to question it. I closed the folder and handed it back to her. No, one word, clear, final. For a second, she just stared at me, like she hadn't heard it right. What, I'm not signing it, I said. Her expression changed. Not confusion, not disappointment, something colder. You don't get to say no, she said quietly. I didn't move, I just did. She let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. Wow, she said. You really think you matter that much? I didn't answer. She took a step closer, lowering her voice even more. Let me make this simple for you, she said. Dad makes one call and your little desk job disappears. There it was, the threat, expected, predictable. You think your boss is going to protect you? She continued. You think anyone in your chain of command is going to choose you over him? I held her gaze. Sign it, she said. Or tomorrow you're out. No job, no backup, nothing, silence. She waited. I could see it in her face. She thought this was the moment I'd fold. The moment I'd remember my place. The moment I'd do what I was told, like always. Instead, I reached down and pulled the zipper the rest of the way across my suitcase. Slow, deliberate. The sound filled the room. Then I stood up. Now we were eye level. Close enough that she couldn't pretend this was still casual. You're wrong about one thing, I said. She frowned slightly. What, I don't work for your commander, I said. She opened her mouth to respond. I didn't give her the chance. I don't even work in your chain. That made her pause. Just a fraction, but it was enough. I picked up my suitcase and set it upright. Then I looked straight at her. I work for counterintelligence. The room went quiet. No movement, no sound. Just that one sentence sitting between us. For the first time since she walked in, Valerie didn't have anything ready. I watched it hit her. Not all at once, but enough. A small crack in that perfect confidence. What, she said. I didn't repeat it. I didn't explain it. I didn't need to. Because now she understood one thing. This wasn't about a signature anymore. This was about something she hadn't planned for. Something she couldn't control. I picked up my coat. She didn't move. Didn't stop me. Didn't say another word. And for the first time in a long time, Valerie Sterling looked like she wasn't the one in charge of the room anymore. I scanned my badge and stepped through the glass doors as they sealed shut behind me. The building always felt the same in the morning. Quiet, controlled, no wasted movement, no noise that didn't belong. People here didn't raise their voices. They didn't need to. Everything that mattered happened on screens. I walked past the front security desk without breaking stride. The guard nodded once. He knew who I was. Not my name, most people didn't use that here, but my clearance level. That was enough. The elevator opened before I even pressed the button. Restricted access floors didn't wait on you. They recognized you. I stepped inside, tapped my code, and watched the doors close. No mirrors, no music. Just a clean panel and a silent ride-up. By the time the doors opened again, I was already done thinking about last night. Not because it didn't matter, because it did. And that meant it needed to be handled correctly. I walked into my office, set my bag down, and powered on the system. 3 monitors came to life in sequence. Secure network handshake, identity verification, clearance confirmation, access granted. This was where the real work happened. Not at dinner tables, not in uniforms, not in speeches. Here. I logged in and pulled up the internal clearance database. Richard Sterling. The name appeared instantly. Retired general, active consultant. Multiple contracts tied to defense logistics and procurement. Everything looked clean on the surface. It always did. I leaned back slightly, fingers resting on the keyboard. I could have closed it right there, ignored it, pretended last night was just family noise. But Valerie hadn't brought me that file by accident. And people don't fake signatures on clean contracts. I opened a new panel, full audit request. The system paused for confirmation. That wasn't something people clicked lightly. A full audit didn't just review paperwork. It dug into everything: financial trails, authorization chains, communication logs, subcontractors, cross-agency flags. Once it started, it didn't stop until it found something, or proved there was nothing to find. I hit confirm. Processing. The system began pulling data from multiple nodes at once. Lines of information started filling the screens: dates, amounts, approvals, routing paths. At first glance, it looked like noise. It wasn't. It was a pattern. You just had to know how to read it. I filtered by contract origin, then by approval authority, then by financial movement. And that's when the first inconsistency showed up. A transfer that didn't match the contract value. Small difference, easy to miss, unless you were looking for it. I tagged it. Then another one appeared. Different contract, same pattern, then another, and another. The numbers weren't random. They were consistent, controlled. Whoever did this wasn't stealing in big chunks. They were shaving off the edges. Over and over again, I zoomed in on one of the contracts Valerie had signed. Her name was clean, verified, proper chain of command, everything where it should be. Except one thing, the authorization override. It came from Richard, or at least it said it did. I pulled the signature file and overlaid it with verified samples. The difference was subtle. Pressure points, stroke timing, micro delays, not something you'd see unless you knew what to look for. But it was there. The signature was forged. I sat back for a second, not surprised, just confirming what I already suspected. Valerie hadn't just pushed bad paperwork. She'd built a system, and Richard. I opened his communication logs, encrypted calls, private channels, old contacts still picking up the phone when he called. Retired didn't mean disconnected. It meant unofficial, which made it harder to track. But not impossible. I traced one of the flagged transactions backward, through 3 shell vendors, 2 subcontractors, and into a private account that didn't belong in any defense system. Millions, not thousands, not mistakes, not accidents, millions. I stared at the screen, then I pulled up another contract. Same pattern, same routing, same endpoint. Valerie had been signing, Richard had been covering, and nobody had stopped it, because nobody had looked closely enough. Until now. The system pinged. A red indicator flashed in the corner of the screen, then another, then 3 more. Automated flags were starting to trigger as the audit deepened. Fraud indicators, unauthorized fund movement, signature mismatch alerts. I didn't touch anything. I let it run, because once the system saw it, it wouldn't unsee it. The room felt smaller, not physically, just focused. Every screen now filled with data that told the same story. This wasn't just corruption, this was exposure. Defense contracts tied to compromised vendors. Money moving outside authorized channels. Clearance holders abusing access. I opened the risk assessment panel. The system processed for a moment. Then the result appeared. Severe threat. That label didn't get assigned lightly. It meant national security was at risk. I exhaled slowly, not because I was overwhelmed, because now it was clear. This wasn't family anymore. This was a case. The door behind me opened. I didn't turn right away. I already knew who it was. Evelyn. I glanced over my shoulder. Mark Reynolds stood in the doorway, one hand resting against the frame. Senior oversight, 20 years in. The kind of person who didn't walk into your office unless something mattered. He looked at the screens, then back at me. "What did you find?" he asked. I turned my chair slightly so he could see the main display. He stepped closer, Didn't speak for a few seconds. Just read, watched, connected the dots. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower. Jesus, he said quietly. Yeah, that was about right. Is this confirmed, he asked. It's consistent across multiple contracts, I said. Same pattern, same accounts. He nodded once, processing. Then he looked at me again. You want to hand this off to criminal investigation, he asked. We can escalate, get a full team on it. That was the standard move. Clean, procedural, safe. I turned back to the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. One command, that's all it would take. Forward the file. Let someone else handle it. Let it become another case number, another report, another quiet collapse behind closed doors. I thought about last night, about the table, about the way my father looked at me like I didn't exist unless I was in his way, about Valerie standing there telling me to sign something she knew was wrong, about the assumption that I wouldn't do anything, that I couldn't. I typed a command, not a transfer, not an escalation, something else. Mark watched the screen, then looked at me. What are you doing? He asked. I didn't look away from the monitor. Not handing it off, I said. The system processed the input. Access paths shifted. Authorization controls updated. This wasn't investigation. This was enforcement. Mark's expression tightened slightly. You're going direct, he asked. I nodded once. Yes. He studied me for a second, not questioning my authority, just measuring the weight of the decision. Then he stepped back. All right, he said. What do you need? I didn't hesitate. Nothing, I said. He raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? I met his gaze. I'll handle it. A pause. Then a slow nod. Keep me updated, he said. He turned and walked out, closing the door behind him. The room was quiet again. Just me and the screens. I looked at the final panel. Clearance status. Richard Sterling, active. For now. I entered the final command sequence. My eyes stayed locked on the screen. No, I said quietly. Not to Mark. Not to anyone else. To the decision in front of me. I'll revoke it myself. I hit enter and reached for the confirmation key when the alarm cut through the room. Sharp, loud, not a drill. Every screen froze for half a second, then shifted into restricted mode. A red banner ran across the top priority override. Executive review required. I didn't move right away, because alarms like that don't happen by accident. A second later, my desk line lit up. Sterling, I answered. Director wants you in his office. Now. No greeting, no explanation. I stood up, grabbed my folder, and logged out in one motion. The system locked behind me. As I stepped into the hallway, I could already feel the shift. People weren't walking anymore, they were moving with purpose. Quiet, fast, controlled. Something had hit the building, and it had my name on it. The elevator ride up was shorter than usual, or maybe I just didn't waste time thinking, because I already knew what this was. Richard didn't lose control. He redirected it. The doors opened. Executive level, 2 security officers stood outside the director's office. Both of them glanced at me, then at each other. That told me enough. Go in, one of them said. I stepped inside. The office was clean, minimal, no personal clutter, just a large desk, 2 chairs, and a wall of glass overlooking the city. Director Hale stood by the window, hands behind his back. He didn't turn when I walked in. Close the door, he said. I did. The click sounded louder than it should have. He waited a second before speaking again. You've been busy this morning. Not a question. No, sir, I said. Just doing my job. That got his attention. He turned, walked back to the desk, and sat down slowly. Then he picked up a folder. Thin, official. He slid it across the desk toward me. Explain this. I stepped forward and opened it. The header said everything. Department of Defense. Formal complaint. Filed under my name. I read the first paragraph, then the second, then I stopped. Because I didn't need to keep going. Richard Sterling. He hadn't waited. He'd moved first. The complaint accused me of unstable psychological behavior. Claimed I was exhibiting signs of paranoia. Suggested I was attempting to extort family members using sensitive information. There it was. Clean, controlled, and timed perfectly. At the bottom there was a request. Immediate suspension of my system access, pending full mental evaluation. I closed the folder, looked up. Director Hale was watching me closely, not angry, not convinced. Evaluating. Well, he asked. I set the folder back on the desk. He's trying to shut me down before I can act, I said. That's one interpretation, he replied. It's the correct one. He leaned back slightly. Richard Sterling is a retired general with a long record of service, he said. He doesn't file complaints like this without reason. I didn't react. Then you should ask him why he waited until this morning, I said. Instead of yesterday, or last week, or any time in the last 6 years. That hung in the air. He didn't answer. Because he already knew the answer. Timing. This wasn't about concern. This was about control. You accessed his contracts, Hale said. Initiated a full audit. Yes. Without prior escalation. Yes. He studied me for a second. Why I didn't hesitate. Because they're compromised. Silence. Then he leaned forward slightly. That's a serious claim. I don't make casual ones. He held my gaze, waiting, testing, seeing if I'd break. I didn't. Instead, I reached down, unzipped my bag, and pulled out a thick stack of paper. 200 pages. Clean, organized, indexed. I placed it on his desk, next to the complaint. This is the audit, I said. He looked at it, then at me, then back at it. Walk me through it, he said. I didn't sit. I stood there and kept it simple. Multiple contracts routed through his consulting firm, I said. Funds diverted through shell vendors. Signature mismatches on authorization documents. I flipped to a flagged page. His daughter signs the contracts, I continued. He covers the approvals. The money moves off book. Hale didn't interrupt, didn't react, just listened. I turned another page. Total exposure so far, several million. Ongoing. He finally reached for the report. Flipped through it, fast, then slower. Then he stopped. On a page with highlighted signatures, he leaned closer. I watched his face change, not dramatically. Just enough. That slight tightening around the eyes, that shift in focus, recognition. This is forged, he said. Yes, and you're certain, yes. He kept reading, another page, another. Then he set the report down, carefully, like it mattered, because it did. He leaned back in his chair, exhaled once, then looked at me again, different now, not evaluating me, evaluating the situation. How far does this go, he asked. Far enough, I said, and it's still active. That was the key, not past, present, still happening. He glanced at the complaint again, then back at the audit. The contrast was obvious. One was noise, the other was evidence. He tapped the edge of the report with his finger. Why not send this to criminal investigation, he asked. Let them take over. Standard process. Safe process. I shook my head once. Because by the time it gets processed, they'll start covering tracks, I said. Freezing accounts, shifting assets, destroying anything they can. And you think you can move faster? I know I can. He watched me. Longer this time. Measuring risk, authority, control. Then he asked the question that actually mattered. What are you planning to do? I didn't look away. Revoke his clearance, I said. The room went quiet, not because it was unexpected, because of what it meant. Security clearance wasn't just access, it was power, reputation, leverage. You take that away, everything else starts to collapse. Hale rested his hands on the desk, steady, controlled. If you do that, he said, there's no quiet version of this. I'm not looking for one. Another pause. Then he nodded once. Slow, decisive. How many agents do you need? He asked. I didn't even think about it. None. That caught him off guard. None. I don't need a team, I said. I need access. He studied me again. Then a small shift in his expression. Not doubt, not concern. Something closer to respect. All right, he said. You have it. He pushed the complaint aside. Didn't even look at it again. Whatever this turns into, he added, you own it. I understand. I picked up my report. Zipped my bag. Turned toward the door. Evelyn, I paused. Looked back. Be right, he said. I nodded once. Then I walked out. The hallway felt different now. Not tense, focused, clear, because now it wasn't just a suspicion. It was a fight. And it had officially started. I stepped out of the building into cold gray air and let the door close behind me without slowing down. The city looked the same as always. Traffic moving, people walking. Nothing on the surface changed. That was fine, because the real shifts never showed up on the surface first. I pulled my coat tighter, walked down the steps, and didn't check my phone until I reached the corner. 3 missed calls, all from Patricia. That alone was enough to tell me things were already moving. I didn't call back. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened my messages. Valerie's name popped up first. Not a text, a post, public. Of course it was. I tapped it. There she was standing in the front hallway of the house phone, held high, that same practiced smile on her face. Boxes stacked behind her, wedding binders spread across the dining table like she was already running a business. New chapter, she said into the camera. New space, new life, building something real. I almost laughed. Building something real. In a house she didn't own. In a system she didn't understand. I closed the app and slipped my phone back into my pocket. Then I crossed the street and walked into a small cafe on the corner. Quiet, half empty, no one paying attention. Perfect. I ordered black coffee, took a seat by the window, and set my bag on the table. Then I took out my phone again. Patricia called the second I unlocked it. Right on time. I let it ring once, twice, then I answered. Evelyn, she said immediately, her voice soft and warm, like nothing had happened the night before. Honey, I've been trying to reach you. I didn't respond. She filled the silence quickly. I just wanted to check in, she continued. Make sure you're settling in somewhere. Settling in. Like I'd moved out weeks ago, like she hadn't watched me walk out the door with a suitcase. I'm fine, I said. Oh good, she replied, relieved in a way that sounded practiced. That's good to hear. A pause. Then she shifted. You know, she added carefully, there's still the matter of the property taxes this quarter. There it was, right on schedule. I took a sip of coffee. Didn't rush. Didn't react. I've been covering those for years, she continued. And with everything going on right now, it would really help if you could take care of it again. Just until things stabilize. Things stabilize, like they ever had. That's not my responsibility, I said. Another pause. This one tighter. Evelyn, she said a little sharper now. This is still your family. No, it wasn't. Not the way she meant it. You asked me to leave, I said. Remember? That's not what this is about, she replied quickly. This is about doing what's right. I looked out the window. Cars passing, people moving, normal. Everything's still normal. Then you should pay it, I said. Silence. Longer this time. Then the tone changed. You're being difficult, she said. No, I replied. I'm being clear. I ended the call before she could respond. Set the phone down and finished my coffee. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Because that conversation had just confirmed one thing. They still thought this was a negotiation. It wasn't. I picked up my phone again and opened a different contact. Asset Management Group, private line. They answered on the second ring. Good morning, Ms. Sterling, professional, direct. Exactly how I liked it. I need to initiate a contract review, I said. Property ID 7-114, no questions, just typing. I have the file, the agent said. What's the nature of the review? Violation of loan terms. I said. Unauthorized leverage against the property. Another pause, then a shift in tone. More focused now. Do you want to proceed with enforcement? I didn't hesitate. Yes, confirming they said you are activating the recovery clause under trust authority. I am. Silence for a second, then understood. We'll begin the process immediately. Notify local enforcement, I added. I want it executed today. Done. The line went quiet. Then you'll receive confirmation shortly. I ended the call. Simple, clean, no raised voices, no arguments, just process. I sat there for a moment watching the street. Then my phone buzzed again. Unknown number, I answered. Evelyn Sterling. A breath on the other end, heavy, controlled. Then it broke. What the hell did you do, Richard? No greeting, no pretense. Just raw anger. I leaned back in my chair. What are you talking about? I asked. Don't play games with me, he snapped. There's a sheriff's vehicle outside the house. They're talking about seizure orders, asset enforcement. What did you do? There it was, right on time. I took another sip of coffee. Let him sit in it for a second. Then I spoke. You used the property as collateral, I said, without authorization. Silence. Short, sharp. Then you don't know what you're talking about. I do, I said. The loan terms are clear. His breathing got heavier. They can't do this, he said. This is my house. No, it wasn't. Check the paperwork, I replied. Another pause. Longer this time. Because now he was thinking. Actually thinking. Connecting pieces he should have paid attention to years ago. You... He started, then stopped. Then his voice came back louder. You set this up. I didn't answer right away, because he was finally getting close. You think you're clever, he continued. You think you can pull something like this and get away with it. I looked out the window again. Same street, same movement, different reality. I'm not pulling anything, I said. His voice cracked, anger turning into something else, something closer to panic. You're going to fix this, he said. Do you hear me? You're going to call them and fix this right now. I smiled slightly, not because it was funny, because it was predictable. No, I said. Silence. Then it exploded. You ungrateful, he started. You think you can do this to me, to your own family? You're a damn. I cut him off. I'm cleaning up a liability, I said. That stopped him. Just for a second. Enough. What, he said. I set my cup down. Steady, calm, and then I said it. Clear, measured, final. I'm just taking the trash out of my house, General. Nothing on the other end. No response. No comeback. Just silence. And for the first time since I'd known him, Richard Sterling didn't have anything to say. I set my phone down and didn't bother checking it again as the elevator carried me up to my apartment. By the time the doors opened, I already knew what came next. You don't pull the ground out from under people like Richard and Valerie and expect them to sit quietly. They react. And when people like them panic, they don't think. They reach. They grab. They make mistakes. I stepped into my apartment, locked the door behind me, and moved through the space without turning on the lights. Habit, control, everything exactly where I left it. Clean, minimal, no wasted space. I set my bag on the table, took off my coat, and walked straight to the desk by the window. The external drive sat exactly where it always did. Small, black, unremarkable. But inside it, everything. Audit data, financial trails, signatures, transfers, links they didn't even know existed. I picked it up, turned it once in my hand, then placed it back down. Not hidden, not locked away, just visible. Because sometimes the easiest way to control a situation is to let the other person think they have a chance. I checked the security panel, system armed, motion sensors active, entry logs clean. Good. I moved to the living room, turned off the last light, and sat down in the chair facing the door. Then I waited. No TV, no music, no distractions, just silence. Hours passed. The city outside dimmed. Traffic faded. Lights went out one by one. Midnight came and went. Then a soft click. Not from inside, from the door. I didn't move. The handle shifted slightly, paused, then moved again. Careful, testing. Whoever was out there didn't want noise. They were trying to be quiet. That told me everything I needed to know. The lock gave, slow, controlled. The door opened just enough for a shadow to slip through, then it closed behind them. No lights, just movement. Fast now, urgent. I could hear it in the breathing, uneven, tight, desperate. Valerie. She moved straight past the living room without looking around. Straight to the desk. Of course she did. Drawers opened, closed. Opened again, faster now. Objects hitting the surface. Papers shifting. A chair scraping against the floor. She was losing control. Good. Where is it? She muttered under her breath. Not asking, demanding. Like the room owed her an answer. She pulled open another drawer hard enough to slam it into the stop. Then another, then she moved to the shelves. Books pulled out, dropped. Stacked items knocked over. Everything getting louder, more frantic. I stayed where I was, watched, listened, because this part mattered. People don't show you who they are when things are going well. They show you when everything starts collapsing. Valerie turned back toward the desk, breathing harder now. Her movements sharper, less controlled. Her hand hit the surface and stopped. The drive, right where I left it. She froze for half a second, then grabbed it, tight, like it was the only thing holding her together. Got it, she whispered. Not relief, not calm, just a break in the panic. She turned toward the door, and that's when the lights came on. Bright, instant, no warning. She flinched, hard eyes snapping toward the living room, and that's when she saw me, sitting exactly where I'd been the whole time. One leg crossed over the other, hands resting on the arm of the chair, calm, still, watching her. For a second she didn't move, didn't speak, just stared, like her brain hadn't caught up yet. Going somewhere, I asked. Her grip tightened around the drive. What she started then stopped. What are you doing here? I tilted my head slightly. This is my apartment, I said. That didn't land. Not fully, not yet. Her eyes flicked around the room, looking for something, an exit, an explanation, control. She didn't find any of it. You set this up, she said finally. Not a question, a realization. Yes, I said. That was when she noticed them. Two figures standing just behind me, silent, still, federal agents. One holding a recorder, the other watching her with the kind of focus that doesn't leave room for mistakes. Valerie's face changed, fast, fear replacing anger. What is this, she demanded. What are they doing here? I didn't answer right away. Because now she was exactly where she needed to be. Cornered, no script, no backup, just pressure. You broke into my apartment, I said. You accessed restricted material. I didn't, she started, then stopped. Because she was still holding the drive. Her hand dropped slightly, just enough. Her breathing got sharper. You don't understand, she said, voice rising. This isn't what you think. I didn't move, didn't interrupt. Let her talk. Because people in her position always do. They fill the silence, they try to explain, and in doing that, they expose everything. You forced this, she said, pointing at me now. You pushed this too far. No, I said. You did. Her voice cracked. You think I had a choice, she shot back. You think I wanted any of this. There it was, the shift. From control to defense. Dad set it up, she continued, words coming faster now. He told me what to sign. He told me where to send it. I just followed instructions. The agent behind me adjusted his stance slightly. Still recording, still silent. Valerie kept going. He said it was clean, she added. He said it was covered, that nobody would look. Her voice broke on the last word. He told me what to do, she repeated. I didn't create this. I leaned forward slightly, just enough to meet her eyes. Say that again, I said. She didn't hesitate. He forced me to sign, she said. He's the one who set it up. He's the one moving the money. I raised a hand. She stopped. The room went quiet, completely. Then I smiled. Not warm, not reassuring, cold, precise. Thank you for your statement, Captain, I said. It hit her immediately, not the words, the meaning. Her eyes widened. Her grip on the drive loosened. The room shifted again, and this time she felt it. What did I just say, she asked. No one answered, because she already knew. Her knees gave slightly, just enough that she had to catch herself on the edge of the desk. Her breathing turned uneven, faster, panic setting in fully now. No, she said. No, that's not. But it was. Every word, recorded, clear, voluntary. I stood up slowly, took one step toward her. She didn't move, couldn't, because now there was nowhere left to go. You should have just walked away, I said. Her eyes filled. Not with strength, not with anger, with realization. Too late, too clear, and for the first time in her life, Valerie Sterling understood exactly what it felt like to lose control. I let her walk out of my apartment with shaking hands and a mind that wouldn't stop replaying her own words. I didn't stop her. I didn't arrest her. I didn't need to, because fear does more damage than handcuffs when it has time to settle in. And I wanted it to settle. I wanted her to lie awake that night, staring at the ceiling, hearing her own voice over and over again, every word she shouldn't have said, every name she shouldn't have mentioned. I wanted her to feel it, the loss of control, the realization that she had already crossed a line she couldn't step back from. So I let her go. And the next night, I showed up where she thought she was still untouchable. The ballroom was already full when I arrived. You could hear the music from outside, soft strings, polished expensive. The kind of sound that makes everything feel important even when it isn't. I paused at the entrance for half a second, watching through the glass, uniforms everywhere, pressed, decorated, clean, medals catching the light, conversations tight and controlled, laughter that sounded practiced. This was their world. Ceremony, image, recognition, everything I had never needed. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. No one noticed me yet. That was fine. I moved along the edge of the room, taking in the details without stopping. Valerie stood near the center, surrounded by people who wanted to be seen standing next to her. Her posture was perfect. Her smile was back. Controlled again. If you didn't know better, you'd think nothing had happened. That she hadn't broken into my apartment the night before. That she hadn't said everything she said. That she wasn't already standing on the edge of collapse. Richard stood near the stage talking to a group of men who still treated him like he outranked them. because in their world, he still did. Retired didn't erase reputation, and reputation was all he had left. I kept moving, unnoticed, unchallenged, until the music softened and someone tapped a glass. Richard turned toward the stage, adjusting his jacket, already stepping into position before anyone formally announced him. Of course he did. He didn't wait to be invited. He expected it. The room quieted, eyes shifted, attention followed him like it always had. He stepped up to the microphone, straightened slightly, and looked out over the crowd, confident, certain, completely unaware. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began. Voice steady and practiced. "This is a proud moment for my family." Family, that word again. I stopped walking, stayed near the back of the room, watching, listening. This engagement, he continued, gesturing toward Valerie, represents more than just a union between two people. It represents commitment, service, honor. The crowd nodded. Of course they did. Because those words sound good in a room like this. They don't require proof. They just require confidence. My daughter, he went on, voice lifting slightly, has dedicated her life to this country. She's shown what it means to lead from the front, to stand when others hesitate, to act when others wait. Valerie smiled. Perfect. Measured. Like she'd practiced it in a mirror. And as for the future, Richard added, the work we've built, this company, this legacy, it will continue. Stronger than ever, because we understand what matters. I almost laughed. Because he really believed that. He believed the story he was telling, that everything was still intact, that nothing had shifted, that he was still in control. He wasn't, and he was about to find out. I stepped forward, one step, then another. Still no one noticed, because they were all looking at him, listening, nodding, until I reached the center aisle. That's when the doors opened behind me, loud, sharp, not part of the event. The music cut instantly, like someone had pulled the plug. Conversations stopped mid-sentence, heads turned. Every eye in the room shifted at once, not to Richard, to the entrance, and then to me. I didn't stop walking, not when the room went silent, not when people started stepping back to clear a path, not when Valerie's smile dropped, because she saw me, and she knew. I walked straight down the aisle, my steps even, controlled, echoing across the polished floor. Behind me the sound of boots followed, measured, in sync, a small team, armed, federal. No one needed an announcement. They understood what that meant. I reached the front of the room, stopped a few feet from the stage, looked up. Richard stared down at me. Confusion first, then irritation, then something else. Something slower, something colder. "You don't belong here," he said into the microphone, voice sharper now. "This is a private event." I didn't answer, didn't look at the crowd, didn't acknowledge anyone else in the room. Just him. Valerie stepped closer to the edge of the stage. Her eyes locked on mine. No smile now, no control, just tension. "What are you doing?" she asked quietly. I stepped forward again. Close enough now. Close enough that they couldn't pretend I wasn't part of this moment. Close enough that the entire room could feel it. "I'm here for business," I said. Richard let out a short laugh. Forced. "You think you can walk in here and make a scene," he said. "You don't have that kind of authority." I held his gaze, didn't raise my voice, didn't rush the words. "You're right," I said, a small pause. Just enough to let it land. "Not here." The silence tightened. The air shifted, because now they were listening differently, now they were watching, trying to understand what they had missed. I reached into my jacket slowly, no sudden movement, no surprise, just deliberate, controlled. Valerie's breath caught. Richard's posture changed, just slightly, because something in the room had already told them this wasn't a mistake. I pulled out a sealed folder, marked, official, recognizable, even from a distance. And for the first time that night, Richard Sterling didn't look like the man in control of the room anymore. He looked like someone who had just realized the ground under him wasn't solid, and Valerie looked like she already knew what was coming next. My steps echoed across the marble floor as I moved closer to the stage, steady and unhurried. Every sound carried, every movement watched. No one spoke. Not the guests, not the officers, not even the staff lining the walls, because something had shifted and everyone in that room could feel it. Richard pointed straight at me, his voice snapping back into command. "You don't have the authority to be here," he barked. Security, remove her. No one moved. Not a single step. Because the men behind me weren't venue security. And everyone in that room knew the difference. I kept walking, up the steps, onto the stage, straight toward him, close enough now that I could see it clearly. The strain in his jaw, the slight tightening in his shoulders, the way his eyes were already searching for control. That wasn't there anymore. Evelyn, he said lower now, trying to regain composure. You're making a mistake. I stopped in front of him. No, I said. You already did. Valerie stood just behind him, frozen in place. Her face had gone pale. Not shocked, not confused. She understood. She'd been there the night before. She knew what was coming. Richard tried again, louder this time, forcing confidence back into his voice. You think you can walk in here, and I didn't let him finish. I reached into my coat and pulled out the folder. Thick, sealed, marked with a red stamp that didn't need explanation. The room went even quieter, if that was possible. Because now it wasn't just tension, it was recognition. I opened the folder, slow, deliberate, no rush. Because this part didn't need speed, it needed clarity. Richard's eyes locked onto the document, and for the first time I saw it. Not anger, not arrogance, fear, small, quick, but real. You don't want to do this, he said under his breath. I didn't respond. Instead, I stepped closer to the microphone, adjusted it slightly, and then I spoke. Not loud, not dramatic, just clear enough that every person in that room could hear me. Richard Sterling. The name landed. Clean, final. A few people shifted in the crowd. Because this wasn't a toast. This wasn't a speech. This was something else. I kept going, under authority granted by the Department of Defense and pursuant to national security regulations. Richard shook his head, stepping forward slightly. Stop, he said. You don't understand what you're doing. I didn't look at him. I didn't stop. Your top secret security clearance is hereby permanently revoked. The words cut through the room. No hesitation, no pause, just impact. Someone in the crowd inhaled sharply. Valerie's hand went to her mouth. Richard didn't move, didn't speak. For a fraction of a second, he just stood there, processing, failing. Then I finished it. Effective immediately, I said, due to confirmed financial fraud and actions that compromise national security. Silence, heavy, absolute. Then, and all affiliated defense contracts under your authority are hereby frozen pending federal investigation. That was it. No more words. No explanation, no argument, just fact. Richard's face changed, color draining fast, from red to pale to something closer to empty. He took a step back, then another, like the ground had shifted under him and he couldn't find it again. That's not possible, he said. Voice lower now. You can't, I already did, I replied. His hand moved to his chest. Not dramatic, just instinct, like his body was catching up to what his mind couldn't process yet. This is a mistake, he said again. This is a misunderstanding. You don't have the full picture. I held his gaze. I have all of it. That landed harder than anything else. Because deep down, he knew it was true. His eyes flicked to Valerie. For help, for backup, for something. She didn't move, didn't speak. Because she couldn't, because she'd already given me everything I needed. Richard looked back at me, different now, not commanding, not superior, cornered. You're destroying your own family, he said. No, I wasn't. You did that, I said. That was the moment it broke. Not loudly, not all at once, just a shift. The room wasn't his anymore. The people weren't his anymore. The control gone. A man near the front stepped back slightly, then another, distance, subtle, but real, because reputation only holds until it doesn't, and his had just collapsed. Richard staggered slightly, catching himself on the edge of the podium. This isn't over, he said, trying to hold on to something. You think this ends here? I didn't raise my voice. Didn't lean in, didn't need to. It already did, I said. Behind me I could hear movement. Agent stepping forward. Not rushing, not aggressive, just present, because now this wasn't a family argument, this was enforcement. Valerie finally spoke. Soft, barely steady. Dad. He didn't respond, didn't look at her, because there was nothing left to say, no speech, no recovery, no way to turn this into something else. I closed the folder, turned away from him, and stepped back from the microphone. The sound of my shoes against the marble floor echoed again as I walked off the stage. No applause, no music, just silence. And behind me, the complete collapse of everything they thought would last forever. I stepped off the stage as the first pair of agents moved in. They didn't rush, they didn't raise their voices, they just walked straight toward Valerie. She didn't try to run, didn't argue, didn't even step back. She just stood there in that white engagement dress, frozen in place like her body hadn't caught up to what was happening yet. Captain Valerie Sterling, one of the agents, said calmly, "You're being detained pending investigation into federal fraud and misuse of defense authorization." The words landed clean, no drama, no room for misunderstanding. Valerie blinked once, then again, like she was trying to reset the moment. This is a mistake," she said, but her voice didn't have anything behind it. No confidence, no control, just reflex. The agent didn't respond. He didn't need to. He reached for her wrist, turned her gently. Metal clicked into place. The sound cut through the room, sharp, final. That's when the noise started. Not loud, not chaotic, just movement, whispers, people stepping back, creating space, because no one wanted to be standing too close to the center of something like this. Valerie looked around like she was searching for someone to fix it. Her eyes landed on Richard. "Dad," she said. He didn't answer. He was still standing where I left him, one hand gripping the podium, the other pressed against his chest, staring at nothing, because there was nothing left to hold on to. The agents guided Valerie down from the stage, careful, controlled. She didn't fight, didn't resist, because deep down, she knew this part wasn't optional anymore. I kept walking, not fast, not slow, just steady. Through the space they were clearing, through the silence that had settled over the entire room, until I felt something grab onto my arm. Tight, desperate. I stopped, looked down. Patricia. She was on her knees. I hadn't even seen her drop. Her hand clutched at my coat like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "Evelyn," she said, her voice breaking. "Please." I didn't pull away. Not yet. She looked up at me, eyes wet, makeup already starting to run. "We're family," she said. "You can't do this to us." There it was, that word again. Family. I looked at her. Really looked this time. At the tears, at the shaking hands, at the way her voice cracked just enough to sound real. If I didn't know better, it might have worked. "Please," she repeated. "Your father, your sister, they made mistakes. But this is too much. Mistakes." That's what she called it. Not fraud. Not betrayal. Not everything I had just laid out in front of that entire room. Just mistakes. Her grip tightened. "You can fix this," she said. "You can talk to someone. Reverse it. You always know the right people." I almost smiled. Because even now she thought this was something I could just turn off. Like a switch. Like a favor. Like the rules didn't apply if you asked nicely enough. I thought about last night. About the table. About the way she sat there while Richard told me to get out. About how quiet she was then. How easy it had been for her to look away. "You've had 6 years," Richard said. 30 days, she said. More than fair. I looked back down at her, still holding on to me, still asking, still pretending this was something it wasn't. "Mom," I said. My voice wasn't loud. Didn't need to be, but it cut through everything. She went still, waiting, hoping. I held her gaze. Calm, steady, clear. "You don't get to use the word family," I said, as a shield right after you threw it away. It landed, hard. Not because I raised my voice, because I didn't. Because there was no anger left in it. Just truth. Her hand loosened, just slightly, enough. I reached down and gently removed her grip from my coat. No force, no hesitation, just done. She stayed where she was, on her knees, looking up, but she didn't speak again. Because there was nothing left to say. I turned and walked, past the stage, past the crowd, past the people who were still standing there trying to understand how everything had collapsed so fast. No one stopped me. No one spoke. Because the moment had already passed. The decision had already been made. I reached the doors, pushed them open, and stepped outside. The night air hit clean, cool, quiet. The noise behind me stayed inside, where it belonged. I walked down the steps and onto the sidewalk. The city was still moving. Cars passing, lights shifting, people living their lives like nothing had happened. And that was the point. Because the world doesn't stop when something ends. It just keeps going. I paused for a second. Not to look back, just to breathe. Then I kept walking. No hesitation, no second thoughts, no need to check what was behind me, because I already knew. They would deal with what they had built. The consequences, the fallout, the silence. And for the first time in a long time, none of it belonged to me anymore. Before I go, I want to ask you something. If the people who call themselves your family only stand with you when it benefits them, are they really family or just familiar? Tell me what you think. And if you want more stories like this, real stories about boundaries, consequences, and what happens when you finally stop accepting less than you deserve, make sure you're subscribed. The moment I stopped asking for permission, everything changed. Not the night I walked out, not the night I revoked his clearance. It changed the moment I realized something simple and uncomfortable. They were never going to see my worth, and I needed to stop waiting for them to. For years I thought if I just did enough, if I stayed quiet, stayed useful, stayed patient, eventually it would click for them. They'd see me, they'd understand, they'd respect me. But here's the truth I had to learn the hard way. Some people don't fail to see your value. They choose not to, because the moment they do, they lose control over you. And control was the only reason they ever kept you around. I spent 6 years contributing to that house, paying bills no one thanked me for, fixing problems no one acknowledged, holding things together while everyone else took credit for how stable everything looked. And still I was the one they called the one with the desk job, the one they dismissed, the one they could remove when it became inconvenient. That's when it hit me. Respect is not something you earn by sacrificing yourself for the wrong people. Because the wrong people don't measure your value. They measure your usefulness. And once your usefulness no longer benefits them, they don't hesitate. They replace you or remove you. So if you're sitting there right now thinking, if I just do more, if I just prove myself a little longer, let me save you time. If someone only values you when you're serving them, they don't value you, and they never will. Another thing I learned. Power doesn't look the way most people expect it to. Valerie had the uniform, the medals, the public respect. She walked into rooms and people stood up. I walked into rooms and people barely looked up. And that worked in her favor, because people confuse visibility with authority. They think the loudest person in the room is the most important one. They think the one getting recognition is the one with control. But real power, it's quiet. It sits behind systems. It makes decisions that don't need approval from a room full of people. And because it's quiet, it gets underestimated. That's exactly why they never saw it coming. So here's something I want you to think about. If you've been overlooked, if you've been underestimated, if people have made you feel like you're less than, because you don't fit their version of success, good, let them. Because when you stop trying to prove yourself to people who already made up their minds, you start building something they can't control, something they can't take credit for, something they can't take away. Another lesson, boundaries are not negotiations. That's something most people get wrong. They think setting a boundary means explaining it, defending it, convincing the other person to respect it. It doesn't. A boundary is a decision, not a discussion. When they told me to leave, I didn't argue. I didn't list everything I had done for that house. I didn't try to make them understand, because I already understood something they didn't. If someone is willing to push you out, they've already decided you don't belong. And no amount of explaining will change that. So instead of fighting to stay where I wasn't respected, I left, and I let the consequences follow them. That's the difference. You don't enforce boundaries by talking. You enforce them by action. And that leads to something most people struggle with: control. Not controlling other people, controlling yourself. Because the moment you react emotionally, you give away your position, you lose clarity, you lose timing, you lose leverage. If I had argued that night, if I had raised my voice, tried to prove a point, tried to win the moment, I would have lost the bigger picture, but I didn't. I stayed calm, I walked away, and then I acted, on my terms. In my tamanki. That's where control comes from. Not from being louder, from being clearer. And here's the part no one talks about enough. When you stop reacting, you start seeing everything differently. You see patterns, you see intentions, You see who people really are when they think you're no longer a threat. That's when you make your move, not before, not during the argument, after, when they think it's over. That's where real decisions get made. And maybe the most important thing I learned through all of this is this: you don't need permission to change your life. Not from your family, not from your boss, not from anyone. If something feels wrong, if you're constantly being minimized, dismissed, or used, that's not something you fix. That's something you leave. And I know that's not easy, because walking away means stepping into uncertainty. It means letting go of what's familiar, even if what's familiar is toxic. But staying costs more. It costs your time, your confidence, your ability to trust your own judgment, and eventually it costs your identity. So ask yourself this: are you waiting for someone to finally treat you the way you deserve? Or are you ready to stop asking and start deciding? Because the moment you stop asking for permission, you take your life back. Walking away feels powerful until the silence hits. No more noise, no more arguments, no more people telling you who you are, just quiet. And for a lot of people, that's the part no one prepares you for. Because when everything ends, you expect relief. What you don't expect is the space, the absence, the fact that your life suddenly feels wider, but also unfamiliar. I felt it the first night I slept in my new place. No tension, no footsteps upstairs, no voices through the walls, just stillness. And for a moment, I caught myself wondering, now what that question matters. Because most people think leaving is the hard part. It's not. Staying gone is, building something new is, and the first thing you need to understand is this: freedom doesn't always feel good at first. That doesn't mean it's wrong, it means it's new. When you've spent years in an environment where everything is predictable, even if it's toxic, your mind gets used to it. You know how to respond, you know what to expect. Even the dysfunction feels familiar. So when that disappears, your brain doesn't celebrate, it hesitates. It looks for what's missing, and sometimes it tries to pull you back. Not because it was good, because it was known. So if you're in that phase right now where you've walked away from something unhealthy but it doesn't feel as good as you thought it would, you're not doing it wrong, you're adjusting. Give it time. The second thing I learned: you don't need closure from people who hurt you. That idea that you need one last conversation, one honest apology, one moment where they finally admit what they did. It sounds good, it feels necessary, but most of the time it never comes. And even if it does, it doesn't change what happened. I never got a real apology, not from Richard, not from Valerie, not from Patricia, and I stopped needing one. Because closure doesn't come from them. It comes from the decision you make when you stop going back. When you stop reopening the same door, hoping the outcome will be different. When you accept that some people won't take responsibility and you move forward anyway. That's closure. And once you understand that, something else becomes clear. Rebuilding your life isn't dramatic. It's quiet. There's no big moment where everything suddenly feels perfect. There's no instant transformation. It's small decisions, daily ones, where you choose peace over chaos, where you choose clarity over confusion, where you start building routines that don't revolve around managing other people's behavior. My life didn't get louder after I walked away. It got simpler, smaller in some ways. Fewer people, less noise, but more stable, more predictable, more mine. And that's something a lot of people don't realize. Growth doesn't always look impressive from the outside. Sometimes it looks like less stress, less drama, less explaining. And that's exactly why it works. Another thing I had to learn was this: not everyone gets access to you anymore, and that includes family. We grow up being told that family is automatic, that no matter what happens, they have a place in your life, that you owe them something just because of the relationship. But that's not true. Access is earned, not assigned. If someone disrespects you, manipulates you, or only shows up when they need something, they don't get unlimited access to your time, your energy, or your life. And setting that boundary doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. You're not cutting people off to punish them. You're limiting access to protect yourself. There's a difference. And once you start doing that, something else happens. Your life gets quieter, but also stronger, because the people who remain, they're there for the right reasons. Not convenience, not control, choice. Another lesson that changed everything for me. You don't have to explain yourself anymore. I used to explain everything, my job, my decisions, my boundaries. I thought if I could just make it make sense to them, they'd accept it. They didn't. And they weren't going to. So I stopped, and nothing fell apart. No one suddenly gained more power over me. No opportunity disappeared. The only thing that changed was the weight I was carrying. Because explaining yourself to people who already decided who you are is exhausting and unnecessary. You don't owe anyone a detailed justification for living your life the way you choose. Not when your choices are clear. Not when your values are solid. Not when you're no longer asking for approval. And finally, the biggest shift. The one that ties everything together. The real outcome of all of this. The real revenge, if you want to call it that, isn't what happened to them. It's what didn't happen to me. I didn't lose myself trying to fix them. I didn't stay stuck in a situation that was draining me. I didn't keep proving my worth to people who refused to see it. I moved on. I built something stable, something peaceful, something that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. And that's the part most people miss. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about independence. It's about reaching a point where you don't need the people who once had power over you, where their opinions don't shape your decisions, where their absence doesn't feel like a loss. It feels like space. And when you reach that point, you don't feel angry anymore. You don't feel the need to prove anything. You just live. And that's the real win. So let me ask you this. If you had to choose between keeping the peace or keeping your self-respect, which one are you choosing? Because at some point, you don't get to have both. Tell me what you think. And if this made you look at your own situation differently, stay with me. There's more to learn than just the story.
Final note. This story is a work of fiction, but the valuable lessons we discuss are entirely real and continue to happen to many people every day. If this style isn't for you, that's perfectly okay. Please feel free to look for other content that better suits your needs.